Welcome, everyone, to another edition of The Travel Show with your host, Ted Blank of Ted Blank Luxury Travel and Adventure. And as we do every Thursday, we talk about so many fun travel-related topics. I can't believe that we haven't run out of topics, Ted Blank.
I know, I can't believe it either, but the world is a big place.
It totally is.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever run out.
No, and you know what? The way that you do your presentations is so fascinating to me because you really have a grasp of not only history, but travel and geography. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, I try to explain things. I love what I do, and I try to explain things so that hopefully folks are, as intrigued or inspired as I am.
Well, you know how I hang on your every word.
Okay.
What are we going to talk about today, please?
Well, it's interesting. I've had several people come up to me and chat with me, clients and others, who have gone on river cruises before. They've gone on maybe one or two river cruises, and they want to know where else they can go.
Is this primarily in Europe?
Primarily in Europe.
Okay.
Yep, a few have actually gone on river cruises in the U.S. too, and some people view those as kind of a get your toes wet and then do something a little more adventurous, and other people view it the opposite. They'll do something really adventurous in Europe, and as they get a little older, do something a little more close to home. But people are very curious about where else they can go on a river cruise, and so I thought we could talk about France as a river cruising destination.
That's something that I guess I wouldn't have thought about would be a river cruise destination alone. You think about Germany, a lot of...
The Rhine and the Danube are kind of the top two river cruise destinations, and they probably account for 60% of the ships are operating on the Rhine or the Danube. So, you're going between Amsterdam and Basel, Switzerland on the Rhine, and you're mostly in Germany there, or you're going between kind of the German-Austrian border and Budapest. So you're really in Austria for most of the cruise. But those are definitely the two top river cruise destinations.
Well, let's talk about cruising in France, a completely different way to see the country.
Yeah, very, very different. And, France is such an interesting country. There is so much to see, so much to experience.
Do they like us?
They do. They do, yeah. I think the French get a little bit of a bad rap because most Americans go to Paris, and Paris is a big city, and people in big cities tend to maybe be a little bit brusque and in a hurry and things like that. And the French don't smile. Culturally, they kind of just don't smile. That's not their thing. They actually have a real deep funny bone. They love humor. They're very sarcastic humor, very slapstick humor. But if you were to talk to a French person, it wouldn't be unusual for them not to smile. And we just tend to smile because that's how we do things culturally. So other than that, yes, the French, as a general rule, are always happy to have Americans come and visit. Lots to see, lots to do, lots to try, food and wine and all sorts of neat culinary experiences. So I really think France is starting to come into its own as a river cruise destination, and definitely if you've done a river cruise before, I would put it right at the top of the list.
Well, what does a French river cruise look like?
So first of all, it's going to be like any other river cruise. So it's going to be a small ship, probably anywhere between 90 and 200 passengers on board the ship, and the ship will move with you. So your kind of floating hotel goes along with you. You don't have to pack and unpack, and you'll have the opportunity to go ashore and do a variety of sightseeing activities, whether it's chateaus or winery or World War II history, lots of different options. So just like river cruises everywhere, that's kind of the basics are still going to be the same. And there are 3 rivers in France that river cruise ships can go on. And so if we kind of go north to south, the northernmost one is the Seine River. And the Seine is the river that runs right from the center of Paris. So if you see the Eiffel Tower, if you see Notre Dame Cathedral, that's the Seine River. And it runs out to the ocean, to the Atlantic Ocean, in the city of Le Havre, which is a major port for France. Not very far. It's only about 90 miles from Paris to the ocean, but it's a great river cruise destination. The second one is the Rhone and the Saône River Valley. And so that's going to be a little farther south in France. Central France, kind of going from the city of Lyon, a little to the north of that, and then all the way south to the Mediterranean. And that's going to take you through the heart of the Burgundy wine country, and it's going to take you through Provence, that beautiful part of France where you see those white stone buildings, the lavender. The book A Year in Provence was written about that. Van Gogh, many impressionists painted there, and so it's a neat place, lots of history again, and certainly if you enjoy wine, definitely a place to go. And then the last river cruise will kind of operate in the vicinity of the city of Bordeaux. And Bordeaux is the 3rd largest city in France. It's located on the Atlantic coast, a fair ways south. It's actually almost on the border with Spain. Not quite, but close. And that river cruise is going to be really, really focused on wines. And so if you like Bordeaux wine, much of it is probably like the equivalent of an American Merlot or Cabernet. They tend to have a lot of red wines. Very famous areas there like Saint-Émilion, the city of Cadillac is actually located there as well. But that river cruise in the Bordeaux region, if you're a wine aficionado or just a wino or anything in between, that's a great option as well.
So 3 separate cruises that we
Yes.
could take, and then out of those 3 separate destinations, many cruise lines, I would assume.
Yeah, each
to
of them has many
choose from.
cruise lines operating on them. The itineraries tend to be about the same, because it's a river, so you kind of go in one direction or go in the other direction. And typically there'll be 7-day cruises. And then you'll have the opportunity to spend a couple days before or after the cruise doing something else. So you might start in Paris, go on the Seine River, and then have a chance to go to Brittany and Normandy. You might start in Paris, catch your ship in Lyon, and then end your trip in the south of France along the French Riviera, or even go to Barcelona. Or you might start in Geneva in Switzerland, catch the ship in Lyon, head south, and go to, again, the French Riviera, Barcelona. So lots of options, and 7-day cruise, great vacation. But if you can do kind of 2 weeks and have a little bit of time before or after the cruise, that works out really well as well.
Before and after,
Before
maybe.
and after, yeah, I think that's ideal. It's a long enough flight. You're flying across the Atlantic Ocean, so it's a 8, 9, 10-hour flight. So if you're going to go that far, you might as well spend a little more time there.
So, Ted, when people come to you and they say, I think I would like to go to France, and then you propose maybe one of these river cruises, how do you know what would be the best cruise?
Yeah, we're going to talk
for
about it, and
each
I'll
person?
kind of give a little bit of an overview of each cruise. The Seine River cruise very much focused on history. If you're interested in seeing Paris, if you've never been to Paris, the cruise starts right in Paris, so that's perfect. If you're interested in World War II history, you will visit the D-Day landing beaches in Normandy. You'll visit Monet's gardens at Giverny, and like on every French cruise, you'll have a chance to visit some chateaus and taste some wines. So that's kind of the description of that, and for a lot of people, that's exactly what they want. They've maybe never been to France before, so perfect introduction. The Rhone and the Saône river cruise and the Bordeaux river cruise probably maybe better for second trips to France if you've already been to Paris and you want to see the rest of the country. If you're into wine, certainly either one of those is a great choice. If you're into history and culture, there are some real interesting places along the Rhone and the Saône River. The Bordeaux area, not quite as historic. There aren't quite those major historic areas there, but it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. And the cruise doesn't go very far, so you get a real in-depth perspective on that area as well. So kind of listening to people talking about what each of those cruises offer, and then, usually the obvious answer will kind of percolate to the surface.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So part of what you do, obviously, is trying to customize these to fit every person. But I agree with you. I think it would be smart to do kind of the first one where you start in Paris.
If you've never been to Paris,
been,
if you've never been to Paris, certainly
you're
you don't want to
seeing
miss Paris.
all the big sites.
Yeah, all the big sites, the Eiffel Tower and the Notre Dame and the Arc de Triomphe, and actually sail on the Seine River in the evening and see all the lights in Paris illuminated. So really, really beautiful. But then very quickly you leave Paris behind and you head out into the countryside. And just like in the United States, life in a big city is very different
Completely
than life
different.
in a country, in the countryside. And so you really, really get a different perspective on life in France as soon as you leave those big cities behind. And I love it. It's very charming. Parts of it are very rural, very agriculturally based. Grapes are agriculture. If you go into Normandy, they make a lot of cheese there, Camembert cheese. And then certainly, I think most people want to see some of the major historical landmarks, whether it's the D-Day landing beaches along the Rhone or the Saône River. You can see the Papal Palace, where the popes lived during the Great Schism back in like the 1500s. I don't remember the exact dates, but very, very interesting and kind of a pivotal piece of time in the history of Europe. There are also Roman aqueducts. One of the best preserved Roman aqueducts is a bridge called the Pont du Gard, and it's near the city of Avignon in southern France. And if you Google it, I think it's about 5 stories of arches high, and it's still almost perfectly preserved after over 2,000 years. And when you look at that and when you see those old Roman ruins, they had indoor plumbing before the birth of Christ. That's really interesting. And we kind of lost that along the way. There were a lot of times in the history of the world when there was no indoor plumbing. And so to see that and to see the scale and the power of the Roman Empire is really, really interesting, because there's really nothing like it left in the world today. And to see that up close and personal and be able to touch it and learn about it, I think is really, really interesting and definitely a highlight of visiting France.
When you talk with people and they say that they are interested in France, you brought up 3 completely different ways of visiting France. And then
I know. See, we'll never run out of topics, Bill.
No, and then
Yeah.
you add in, as you said, time in the beginning and time at the
yeah.
end. I'm looking at the map here, and so much of France, and especially back in the days when we were talking about the borders and years ago, so much of that was fluid.
Very much so.
But you really kind of mesh into other countries. What is something that you would recommend? Let's say you fly into to Paris. Is that where most of these start, or do some of these start in a city other than Paris?
Yeah, certainly Paris. Many of them start in Paris, and that's a great place to get to. You know, there are nonstop flights from Minneapolis to Paris, so easy to get to. But if you wanted to do something a little more, not exotic, but a little more adventurous, you could, for example, fly into Barcelona in Spain, spend a couple days there, maybe even spend a couple days in the Basque Country and the wine country of northern Spain. Beautiful, beautiful area. So different. I mean, it's amazing. Barcelona is so different than a city across the border, 90 miles away in France. You could certainly go to Italy if you wanted to, northern Italy, and start there. Some of the river cruises offer a pre or a post cruise program in Switzerland. Not quite as interesting from a historical perspective, but an absolutely beautiful country. I mean, you can just literally just sit in Switzerland and look out your window for day after day after day, and the scenery is just incredible. And of course, the chocolate and the cheese and all that good stuff. And a lot of people actually, interestingly enough, maybe they're going to Europe to visit a family member who might be studying abroad, or maybe they're going to do a little bit of genealogical type research somewhere in Europe. And the nice thing about Europe is it's very easy to get around. By train, by plane. So if you want to do that and combine it with a river cruise, that's something we can absolutely do. And, I remember a couple of years ago, it seemed like there was a wave of everybody had their son or daughter was going to college somewhere in Europe. And so what a perfect excuse to hop on a plane and go over and visit Junior, and then go do something special for yourself with your husband or your wife and get a river cruise as part of that. So almost anywhere. If you wanted to go start in London, it's a 1-hour flight, 2.5-hour train ride to Paris, boom, you're right there. So a lot of options. I mean, really the sky is the limit. And interestingly enough, many river cruises can also be combined into sort of a back-to-back itinerary. So if you really wanted to, you could take the river cruise on the Seine, take a train to Lyon, hop on the river cruise down the Rhone, take a train to Bordeaux, and take the river cruise in Bordeaux. And you might have to spend 1 night or 2 nights on land in between. But, in a month, you could really cover almost everything there is to see in France in the comfort of a river cruise by doing a couple back-to-back trips. Or go down the Rhine River and then hop over to Lyon and keep going south. And, you're almost going from the North Sea to the Mediterranean.
The cruise lines that you would recommend, is that, again, something that you talk with people about to see what they're looking to do?
Yeah. And that's one of the great things about river cruising in Europe is there are a lot of choices out there. And I like to always talk about kind of the good, the better, and the best. And there are river cruises that fit nicely into the good category. Going to be a little more limited in terms of what's included, but oftentimes are going to deliver pretty high value price, pretty low price. There are cruise lines in the middle that deliver a lot, but do it at a little bit lower price point. And then you have some great luxury cruise options where literally everything is taken care of. You have a butler to look after you. You have some of the most incredible sightseeing options available to you, exclusive access to certain places that the general public can't get to. So really there is something for everyone in that river cruise industry. And I think one myth out there is because one river cruise company advertises all over the place, and I think we're all on their mailing list, but they are certainly not the only option out there. And so depending on your interests and how much time you have and how much money you want to spend, there is a river cruise in Europe that's right for you.
You have said before, so many of the price points maybe are misleading because not everything is included.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the important things about looking at sort of any type of a vacation is to understand
what you're getting.
What are you paying for now, and what might you pay for when you get there? A lot of times there's sometimes a false economy in a lower price because they're offering maybe a little more stripped down product, but then when you get there, you're going to spend a lot of money versus a more inclusive product where it's all kind of packaged together into the price.
And you've said some of these you could even leave your pocketbook at home.
Yeah, definitely leave your wallet at home. And other ones you for sure will want to bring it with you because there will be kind of an extra charge for everything. And in those scenarios, it's nice because you can pick and choose and do what you really want to do and not what you want to do. And for some people, that's great. Other people like to have everything included so that there's no stress in making those decisions. So, that's kind of one of those personal preferences that guides the decision on which cruise line to go on. That's what I spend my time doing. All those offers that we all get in email, well, I spend my time sifting through those and understanding them. And because I do that for 8-10 hours a day, every day, I have a pretty finely tuned sense as to, is this a good promotion? Is it something we should look at? Or is this just kind of the typical promotion repackaged in exactly the same way, and let's not worry about it? It's interesting. River cruises, if you were to compare them to like a trip to Mexico or something like that, certainly I'll have a lot more conversations with my clients about a river cruise. And oftentimes we'll talk about it, and then, I might give them a couple options to consider. I might give them a recommendation to take a look at. And then they're going to probably come back with a pretty long list of questions. And we're going to go through and answer them and make sure that we're making the right decision versus taking a trip to Mexico, where it's a much simpler purchase. And so usually people don't have quite as many questions about that. And then there are just all the questions and concerns about traveling to a different continent. Language and currency and tipping and electricity and what type of food am I going to have and all those things, and mobility issues. And so it is a complex purchase. I talk to people sometimes who have booked a river cruise online because they got something in the mail. And very often they wish they had not booked that cruise. They wish they had done something different, but they do it because they didn't know that there were any other options. And so that's one of the important conversations to have. It's like, let's talk about all these different options and make sure we're picking the one that's right for you.
Ted, if people want to actually talk to you in person and learn more, how could they do that, please?
Yeah, so the best way to get a hold of me is to give me a call at 651-964-8245 or visit my website, tedblanktravel.com, and we can schedule an appointment. We can chat on the phone. We can chat via Zoom, or I'm certainly happy to get together and chat in person as well.
Merci.
Very nice.
Ted Blank is the host of the Travel Show on AM 1460 and FM 97.7 KDWA in Hastings. This travel show has been brought to you by Ted Blank, Luxury Travel and Adventures.